Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another installment of Discuss Foundation. This week, we are going to be doing episode 7 of season 1. What is it? Memories and Martyrs?
Mysteries and Martyrs.
Mysteries and Martyrs. And Brian, can you tell us who directed and wrote this episode, please?
It was directed by Jennifer Fong and it was written by Caitlin Saunders. Jennifer Fong also directed last week's episode, Death and the Maiden.
Awesome. So what we're going to do, guys, on the podcast, as always, is we're going to go ahead and start with a general overview of our thoughts on the episode, as far as, if we liked it, where we rank it for the season, kind of general thoughts there. And then we're going to go into a scene-by-scene recap of the show and kind of give our thoughts a little more specifically and kind of break down things we liked and didn't like about the episode there. And then finally, we're going to go into predictions about where we think the show is going to go and in the following episodes. Before I kick it over to Brian so we can get into this recap portion in our general overview, I do want to give a quick disclaimer that me and Brian have not read Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, so we're not really coming at it as a comparison to the books or anything. We don't really know how it relates to the books or vice versa. If you guys are looking for a more dense kind of book heavy content in this regard, there are some other podcasts like Apple Podcasts, and I think the Stars End podcast does that as well. So you guys can always check that out. The other thing too is, guys, we are available on all the major podcasting networks at this point. So if you want to listen to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, anything like that, we are available there as well if you search Discuss Foundation. Make sure to try to support the show best you can on whatever platform that you're doing, whether that's rating it or sharing it on social media. All that kind of stuff helps. We really appreciate that. With that all being said, though, Brian, what were your thoughts on episode 7 of season 1?
I liked the episode. There was a lot of good things that they did. They went over a lot of interesting stuff. They answered a lot of questions. The way that they answered the questions were kind of unique. But at the same time, there was also a lot of stupid mistakes that they kind of did. So it was a weird episode where there was a lot of things going on, and each thing was so different that you could kind of like absorb yourself into like the different sections because each one's leading a different narrative. So that was a really cool take that like they've already been able to split up how the story's being developed, being told, and overall, like I liked where the direction was going. There was just some things in the episode I was kind of like, oh, it seems kind of like, oh, but that was just me. What about you, good sir?
Right.
What were your thoughts of the episode?
Yeah, so this is by far my favorite episode of the season.
Okay.
So far, I absolutely love this episode. I think it's the best directed episode. I think it's the best looking episode, probably. And I
Yeah.
think while I think we are going to get into some stuff that I have some nitpicks about later, we may have kind of the same feelings on certain plot points potentially. But I think this one, the writing was a solid, mainly because it's a lot of plot and not a lot of character stuff, which I think we've talked about. They've struggled in
Yeah.
past episodes with. It's a lot of plot in this one. And we'll definitely dive into some of that stuff when we hit into our recap. But for my money, this is easily the best episode of the season for me. The pacing was the best in this one. There was a lot going on, and then visually it
Yeah.
looked amazing. There were some really good performances in it. I just thought it really hit on all cylinders for me. But let's go ahead and get into the recap here.
Yes.
So we opened the episode on Salvor's ship, or I guess it's Hugo's ship that Salvor's now piloting.
Yep.
And we get this really cool kind of like world building moment where they talk about Hugo's past mining palladium on the mining in the asteroid belt. I guess
Yeah.
is what they were talking about, mining palladium. And then they also talked about why he's not, because apparently when the Anacreon and Despot attacks happened, the Empire stopped giving them tech, and then all of a sudden those closed, and he had to not go there. I thought that was a cool little world building moment where I was like, oh, it's like whenever you show that like the universe had a past and there's like a history and an industry and all that kind of stuff. I was like, oh, that's a cool world building moment. And then it goes right into we see Invictus for the first time.
Yes.
And what did you think about that reveal of Invictus and that scene and everything?
I thought this scene was really cool. It was great that they set up a lot of stuff like what happened to Thespin, like why that faltered and why some of the other stuff has faltered. Like because we knew about Arakan. I started saying
Anacreon.
it Anacreon.
Yeah.
We know about Anacreon that like it just pretty much like blew up.
Brian just watched Dune. If you guys can't tell, he's saying Arrakis.
Yeah, no, I am. I also just bought a Doom board game, so yeah.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah,
I got
that makes
so
sense.
like Arachnus has been on my mind. But
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
it was just really unique because you got to see more stuff like how were they profitable with this? Why did they stop doing that? Because the mining thing was a huge thing that they brought up in episode 1. So
Mhm.
the simple fact that they did do the callback of like, hey, this is the reason why Thespin pretty much is now a dead city, a dead planet, a dead culture. So it was good. I
Mhm.
liked it a lot. The visuals were probably the best in this scene. Like when they do the spacewalk, we get to see a lot of cool visuals, a lot of the space
Mhm.
stuff. The space base, the mining base was really cool. So this, I do agree with you. Like visually, this episode is beautifully done.
Mhm.
A lot of great stuff on there. The thing I didn't like, and I know what's gonna happen, like we could say this for prediction,
Mhm.
is they lose a member in the spacewalk, and
Yeah. Yeah. I think the prediction on that one too. Yeah.
yeah, so we could save that for later. And we could talk about that down the road. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I like the scene. It did set up Invictus, how dangerous it is, and the
Mhm.
visuals were beautiful. So yeah, I liked
Yeah.
it.
So I loved so first the kind of stuff that I had in my notes, the Invictus is the world killer. I like the little again the world building stuff. In this one and I'll talk about it in other scenes as well, but I felt like the world building stuff was very efficient and it was very subtle. It was like it wasn't like hammering it into your head. It was just kind of like conversational stuff where you're like, "Oh, that's kind of
Yeah,
interesting," and it kind of makes you think about the world. She talks about how it was the crown jewel of the empire prior to the Cleons, and I had to look at the captions because I didn't really make out what she was saying, but it was Torellian's
yeah,
fleet, who I'm assuming was the Empire before Cleon was. And it was a woman in the show. This is another one I had a sneaking suspicion of when they said when she was saying she, and stuff. I was like, I wonder if
yeah.
they gender swapped that character for the show because I don't know that in Isaac Asimov's that he would have like I think when people talked about the books, they said that there weren't a lot of prominent female characters in there.
Yeah.
So this might have been something that they gender swapped to make her Torellian or whatever a female character. Because why not? I'm totally cool with it. But I remember that kind of putting a light bulb up and going like, I wonder if they
Yeah.
changed that. But then they said that she disappeared, and there's been this mythical thing about the ship appearing and disappearing throughout space. That was like that's like the myth of what happened to Invictus or something.
Yeah.
Um, the Imperial they also do so they go to do the spacewalk and they
Yeah.
also show Dorum or Dormir the Imperial
Darwin.
commander Dorwin, yeah. They show how he cuts himself and heals through these
Yeah.
Imperial healing nanobots, and I was like, did we see that before? Because I hadn't seen that the nanobots like heal everything. I don't
Yeah,
remember
I
that
think
in
that was the
another
first time we've
episode.
seen it because like they've mentioned the nanobots before, but it was always
Yeah,
in passing. So this is the first time like they play a major like role in a major in the series. So it's
yeah.
interesting.
So it's establishing that kind of new tech. There is that the nanobots kind of have a healing capability to them. The other thing is, he says that. So that's when he's talking with Hugo, and he says, "Hey, are there any?" She says, "Like, hey, are there
Any communication.
any communication relays on the mining towns?" And he says, "I don't really think so." And then the guy says, "I have an uplink that's like from that Black Mirror episode where you can
Yeah.
record everything that you see or hear." Um, and he says that if I can get to something on the Invictus, I can uplink this, right? And then
Yep.
that kind of just gets that plot line gets just dropped, and we'll talk about that in the
Yeah.
prediction aspect too. But that kind of stood out to me as well. Um, and it also kind of sets up that tech later with the Cleons, where he says
Yep.
that they can like store and stuff like that. So
Yeah, it's
that
interesting
was
that.
kind of foreshadowing that scene as well. The effects for the spacewalk were amazing. It reminded me a lot of The Expanse. Even with kind of their suit designs and how they do the zero G effects in that as well, felt very Expanse to me. The turret. I don't know if that was this scene. It might be a later scene as well, but yeah, I remember the effects were amazing and stuff. So I really loved that scene in the beginning. I wrote a couple times throughout my notes. I was like, this is my favorite episode so far, like early on, and then through the middle, and then towards the end and stuff as well. Um, the next scene takes us back to the Maiden with Cleon and Demerzel,
Yep.
and Cleon is giving Demerzel a lashing about her priorities and her loyalties and where they lie. Did you have any thoughts about that scene and this section as well?
Um, it was we talked about it that like this is what she didn't want, and Cleon's first thing he says to her was like, "You made me look bad. Like, how dare you
Mhm.
pick religion over this? What if they knew who you were? Like they were making fun of my soul thing, and you're immortal as well. Like you have reincarnations." So it was a really interesting like perspective because you never really address the elephant in the room, which is she's an android and she lives forever and she's been living forever.
Mhm.
And the simple fact that he says, like, why are you bowing down to someone that's also criticizing you? Like, what makes you different from me? Why is the
Right.
criticism? So that was a really, really unique like conversation that they had that I really did enjoy, that he calls her out, like, you, what makes you so special? I am
Yeah,
the
there's like
emperor. Yeah.
yeah, there's like a kinship between them because they're both kind of soulless, I guess, according to
Yeah.
this Zephyr Halima.
Yeah.
Um
So from the Luminism, so it was really unique. And then with the when he talks to the new Proxima, like, she's gonna win it. Like, we all know that she's gonna win it. The new
mhm.
Proxima, Helena,
Halima. Halima.
Halima,
Yeah.
Halima. So like the conversation with Halima was like, she, and he's like, you know what? What do I need to do to buy you? How can I buy you? Because that's what he's so used to doing,
Mhm.
is buying the stuff or giving you whatever you need, making it. And she's like, just die. I just want you to stop cloning
Yeah.
yourself. Just die. Like, that's, and it's very, very telling. Like, you start seeing how much of out of touch from he is from religion. Like, he had someone that
Mhm.
knows Luminese, that's, so yeah, no, it was a very good episode, a very good sequence, because you get to see him finally lashing out against his advisor that he holds 100%. Like, she says something, he doesn't. So you
Yeah.
get to see the fraction between that. So that, I love the scene because you got to see that, and you also got to see him face reality that, like, he's not God, and people are
He
saying
kind of
like,
got
hey,
take he kind of got taken down a few pegs, like
yes,
she really put him in his place. He's not used to that. He's not used to someone like being that bold to him and like saying
yeah,
that kind of stuff to him. So I love their dynamic. And then the stuff with Demerzel, the thing. So the really interesting thing that we need to pay attention to that he says is he says something along the lines of what if it were to get out publicly about your true nature? And that was a key kind of line for me because I went, oh wow, I didn't even think about this, but it was actually brought up by someone in our comment section in the last episode. But
yeah,
um uh the public doesn't know she's an android.
nope,
So they don't know she's an android. And I remember thinking, like, how can they not know? Because she's been around through all of this stuff. But I guess what they think, and that's what he said in the comment section of our last video, is I think a lot of people think that she's a clone. So they think that she's just like a clone like them, and she's like their advisor through it all. But it really sets up this tension that's probably going to lead into the next season, I would think, that's about her status as an android and about how that would probably cause a lot of negative waves in the galaxy if that news were to get out that the Cleons were keeping an android for themselves and using it as an advisor or something. So I found that really
yeah,
interesting. I think that was probably the most important aspect of that scene, was that information that the public does not know about her status as an android. And then, like you said, the conversation with Halima, between Halima and him, I thought was really great. It was really interesting to see that Cleon get really taken to task because, like you said, she wasn't able to be bought or paid for anything. She's truly like an authentic revolutionary that just wants what's true and right to occur.
yeah,
Um, and she's not going to back down from anybody to take it. So it sets up a really tense standoff that's going to go on between these two characters that we're going to expand upon later in the scene. We both knew after the last episode. We both said, okay, well, she's in the lead now, 100%, because
yeah.
that speech was such a big deal. And they came in and said the speech struck a chord, and I was like, yeah, that's an understatement, because she definitely took over the lead for that, and we both knew that going in. There were really
Oh yeah.
great aerial shots in that scene
Yes.
as well. Really cool, like really establishing shots and aerial shots that really show off the maiden and those dunes. The landscapes were so different between all the storylines that we were going in this episode that I found really engaging as well. Um,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, no, and going off of what you said, like, you when he's talking to Halima, he finds out that the people are making this trek across the desert in the name of the maiden or the mother.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
he kind of like, it's like, well, if they could do it, I could do it. If they could do it, I could do it. And one of the things that, like, I really loved in that scene, like when he's talking to Halima and you see the blind guy and he's like, oh, save me, save me, save me, was he gave it out his hand. Brother Day took it. Blind guy's like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. And the first thing Brother Day's like, oh, I love you. And when everybody's looking away, he's like, okay, we're done. Stop,
Yeah,
stop
yeah.
touching me. I don't want to be touched anymore. And you just
Right.
see like the disgust in his face where like he's like trying to prove a point, like, I am a man of the people. Oh, look at
Hmm.
you. Okay. Oh yeah. No, no, no. You're getting too close to me. Back off.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that was a really great perspective because you never really got to see anybody touch Brother Day,
Hmm.
and that was the first time we got to see somebody outside of like his concubines and things like that touch him, and
Right.
his reaction to being touched was like, ooh, ooh, get away.
Yeah. It kind of visualizes his desperation. You know what I mean? Like he's really starting to feel the pressure of between Harry Seldon's prophecy of this stuff coming true, and then her taking over as potentially taking over as Proxima with all the trillions of people. He's starting to feel a little more desperate because, like you said, you know he doesn't want to touch that guy's hands, and you know he doesn't want to do all that stuff. It's all just a show for politics, and that's what they kind of show in that scene.
Yep.
Um, the ritual I thought was a little cool. Again, a really cool world building nugget where it was talking
Yeah.
about that apparently the followers of Luminism have to go on some kind of ritualistic pilgrimage
Yeah.
where they kind of go through like a rite of passage that's very very dangerous. And if they make it out, it's supposed to be like telling of their salvation or their that they've earned favor in the mother's eyes or whatever you want to call it. I thought that was a really cool nugget to add in there, and I think that's going to play in the next couple episodes as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
One,
called the Spiral, I think, is what they said.
yeah, before we move on, it was very interesting because Brother Day asks Dor what's her name again?
Oh, Halima, Zephyr Halima,
No, the android.
Demerzel, Demerzel.
Demerzel. I gotta get
Hmm.
like two things, one with the names.
Yeah.
So what was interesting was when Brother Day asked Demerzel, I was like, hey, have you ever done this journey before? She was like, oh yeah, many, many years ago.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, how long ago did you do it? Like if you said many years ago, like she never gave an exact date. And she's normally
Yeah.
very like concrete with her information. She's like,
True.
so this was the first time she was kind of like starting to hide stuff from him. And that's the first time
Yeah.
so it was very that was one of the like those two takeaways was like the taking the hand away, and then when he asked Demerzel, I was like, oh, when did you make the journey? And she's like, oh yeah, years ago. Don't worry about it. Stop asking me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Cleon and Demerzel time is different. So when they say many years, they can mean like 10 years or they could mean like 1,000 years. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's
I think the Imperial thing's been 400 years or something like that. But Demerzel, no one knows how old she is. So yeah,
yeah,
she could have been talking like a millennia ago. Who knows? You know?
exactly.
That's a good point. But yeah, she says in the genetic dynasty. And the thing, okay, so I wanted to get back to as well the reason that the episode's named is it Memories and Martyrs? Is that what it's called?
Mysteries and Martyrs.
Mysteries and Martyrs. Yeah, the reason it's called Mysteries and Martyrs. One of the things is obviously there's Harry Seldon stuff, which we found out at the end of last episode that comes back, and he's kind of made himself a martyr. That's a big thing. But the other thing is, I think is important is in this scene with Halima, he knows he can't kill her, right?
Yep.
So everything in him wants to kill Zephyr Halima and just get it over with. He wants to just murder her right there if he can. But like he says in episode 2, when he was talking about Seldon, and Seldon's put this doubt in his mind, he said, I think, quote, martyrs tend to have a long half life. So he knows that if he were to kill Zephyr Halima, it would just really like all of whatever power he's trying to hold on to in the galaxy would just kind of float away because her message would just get amplitude. Her message would just get amplified to the 10th degree, you know?
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting that in that moment you're like I can tell I'm like he wants to kill her right now but he knows he can't. So and she knows that and she knows and that's why she's got him by the recycled balls, you know.
Yeah.
So in that scene. So I thought that was really really interesting but it kind of tied into the title which I thought was cool.
Yeah. No, it was. And so yeah, moving on to the next
Hmm.
section, and I think this was like the most visually weird one possible was when they finally make it to Invictus. They have to, after the end, they have to walk the whole of the ship till they get to the entrance, but there's a gun turret, and
Hmm.
they can't be more than like 2 meters. An object can't be bigger than 2 meters. So that was a really unique, like, okay, so you can't be bigger than 2 meters. So everyone needs to be under 6 feet, technically.
Which seems like an easy ask, right?
Yeah, it's like, okay, we need everybody under 6 feet. It's like, okay, add the spacesuits, add all that stuff. Like, I'm pretty sure everybody's gonna be
Hmm.
above 2 meters, but
Oh
you
no no no!
know,
Like I think you misunderstand. So when they said 2 meters, they mean they have to be 2 meters apart. So like
oh,
they have to walk apart at least two
yeah.
meters so that the thing doesn't recognize a cluster of something. So
Okay, okay.
like it
Yeah, I
was
thought
saying
it
they
was
have to
like
walk apart, not necessarily be like that size or something.
okay. that makes sense now. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think that scene was really unique, but also very stupid. And this is one of my biggest critiques of the episode because I liked the episode,
Hmm.
but so we see them there. Lewis gets too close to somebody, and the turret goes off, and it starts.
Lewis, man.
I know he always screws it up,
Lewis,
and
man.
it starts shooting at him, and it was unique because you see them there. They're huddled together. They're trying to hide, and Dorwin's like, "Okay, I got this," and runs to the door. It
Mhm.
does the scan. The gun stops shooting, and at that point, I'm going, everybody knows that the only way you could get onto Invictus is you need to have Doran. Why didn't Doran just float off into space like what happened to Hugo, or head towards the communication base, or like just kind of like disappear? Because if they know that he's needed to get onto the ship, and if the ship is alive to destroy the rest of the world or the galaxy, why didn't he just self-sacrifice and be like boop, 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 and float away?
Yeah, well, I mean, one, I don't think he doesn't come off as like a super loyal. I don't know.
Yeah,
He doesn't come off like a bleeding heart. I would sacrifice myself to save whatever. And he doesn't. They really don't know their plan. So they're thinking. I mean, obviously, it's dangerous that they would have this giant like Invictus warship, but
yeah,
they may just be trying to settle a new planet or something. I don't think they know what the intentions were at that point. The other thing too is that we kind of skipped over. That's a really important aspect is that they have to space jump, and then Hugo doesn't make it, so they mag
yeah,
boot. Everyone else kind of mag boots on there. Hugo says his thrusters are not working, and he kind of
yeah,
floats through, and Hugo gets spaced. He gets dead.
yeah,
So Hugo dies pretty early in the episode, or allegedly. We'll go into predictions, I guess, about
yeah.
that. But yeah, Hugo dies. Salvor doesn't really grieve him that much, and then they just kind of and then
Well,
like you said, the turret sequence reminded me of Mass Effect, and I was just
yeah.
like all into it. I thought the action was much
I
more
liked it.
coherent and a lot
Yeah.
better in this one.
Well,
And I really like that scene.
yeah, not to interrupt, but like
Mhm.
uh she wasn't Salva wasn't able to mourn Hugo because Farah, first thing she tells her is like, hide your grief, bury your grief, let's go.
Right,
Like, it's
right,
not important. This is a goal. And you see her like she wants to grieve, she wants to cry, she wants to like, because that's her lover, that's the person that she loves. And
yeah,
having Farah just say, go deal with it, hide your grief, it's like it's very British in that regards of you
yeah.
swallow your grief, you swallow that stuff, and you keep moving on.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it. I would disagree that she wanted to cry as much, but we'll talk about it in the
Yeah.
predictions thing because I think that kind of goes into what we were thinking of there. They get on the Invictus. I really like the design of the ship. I
Yes.
also love that the ticking time bomb element, which I get into this because he brings up. So I put that the ship was really cool, and I love the effect when they turn the gravities on and all the bodies dropped and stuff. That
Yeah.
that reminded me a lot of Expanse as well. Um,
Yeah, and the
the
dust that pops up from the bodies was really cool
yeah.
too.
Yeah, they're all just like frozen and yeah, they're it's like dry ice almost when they hit the ground. The idea of the ghost ship concept, which we'll extrapolate on in a second, is cool. But there's this thing that's like a ticking time bomb, which
Yep.
is there's
The random
flashing
jumps.
these flashing pulsing lights, and they say, okay, when these lights flash, and old idiot, what's his name? You know his
Lewis.
name, Lewis. Yeah,
Yeah.
he says, "Oh, they're patterned. So it was 18 seconds when we first got on. Now it's 16 seconds between pulses." And that was like between when he said they got on the ship and they said that, it was like I don't know 10 seconds of screen time, and it went from
Yeah.
18 to 16. And then she's like, "How much time do we have left?" And he goes, "4 hours." And I remember being like, "Wait, how does that mathematically add up?" I don't know if anybody
Yeah.
watching like knows math or anything, but if it goes from 18 pulses to 16 pulses in about 10
Then the
seconds,
and
why
then the
would it go
15
from
pulses.
16 to 0 in like 4 hours? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, I think
uh,
what it is like the countdowns, like every because he says like it's time intervals. So like it's 18, 18, 18, then 17. Because we skip 17 and then we get to 16 and then 15. And it's just it's a countdown. So I guess
yeah.
it's a mathematical countdown that
Yeah,
might be
it's just
explained in the books.
it's weird that the interval from 18 to 16 seems so fast, but the intervals from 16 to 0 is 4 hours. Because it was like
Yeah.
that's to me when he said it was 18 when we got on the ship, and he said it was 16. I was like, oh dude, they gotta find something now because it's about to
Yeah.
like count down to like 0. I thought they were gonna have like 10 minutes or something. He was like 4 hours. I
Yeah.
don't know. That might just be a nitpicky thing. So if anybody in the comments knows why that is,
And
I thought that sounded like a huge gap considering.
yeah. And I think this is the biggest issue with the show that we've talked about beforehand, and we could talk about it later, is
Mhm.
giving a sense of time, because I don't think it gives you the sense of time as well as you think as it thinks it does. And I think this is a perfect example of it, where it goes from 18 to 16 in 10 seconds, and then you have 4 hours from 16 to 0. So it's like
Yeah, yeah,
you have no sense of time. But anyway, uh
right.
now comes one of the things that you were 100% correct on.
Hmm.
Uh I don't know if we're at that point yet, because I think we might actually be at a different, okay, so we're at a different scene.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll talk about
y-
what you're 100% right on afterwards, 'cause I think that
mhm.
ends the episode. But the garden, we come back to the garden.
Yes. So, or this is the garden on Trantor.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, right before that too, there was a quick scene where I think it was this quick scene before that where Brother Day goes out and says he pretty much says that he's going to leave it to the mother or whatever. Wasn't that right before
Yeah.
that? Okay, I just
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
make sure because I was
it's
looking at my
yeah,
notes.
yeah, it's a real quick scene where he pretty much says, "Hey, I'm gonna do the journey."
He's going to do the journey, right? I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure we had that in there. And then yeah, back on Trantor, we're in the garden where this is where Brother Don and Azora were getting their love story, right? Their little fling, I guess. Um some notes that I had about the scene that I noticed, and I don't know if this was the
Yeah.
case in past episodes, is that I think what's really cool about the visuals in this scene is that the lighting is so soft it feels artificial because it is. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like it doesn't feel like there's a sun. It just felt like there was like it felt like an office building but less bigger and outside. You know what I mean? And I remember
Yeah.
thinking like it was really cool how soft the lighting was. And I remember I thinking like, oh, this looks fake or artificial. And I was like, oh, it is fake and artificial. So that totally makes sense that they would have it that way. So I thought that was a cool point about that. Um,
Yeah.
I have a prediction about this subplot that we'll go into in the predictions phases as well. I'll probably save it for that. But this is the scene where she offers him color correction lenses or whatever. Is
Yep.
that right?
Yeah,
And
it's
he
color
said, and
correction
he
lenses.
tells her why he can't do them
They would
because
notice.
if they notice that he's different, then he dies.
Yep.
I will say, uh, of all of the relationship character stuff, I think this is the best written aspect of this because we what we talked about before in the past romantic endeavors in the show is it felt like they set it up and then it was like you're supposed to buy that they love each other by the end of the
Yeah.
episode and it's like you've seen them for two um this one
Yeah,
seems
like
like they drew it out. I think it's been like 3 or 4 episodes that they've been kind of flirting and building up to this and
yeah.
it feels more consequential because of that, you know.
Yeah, because like the Raish and Gale one was like all of a sudden they kind of flirted a little bit, and it was kind of like, oh yeah, you're cute. Yeah, you're cute too. Okay. And then next thing you know, they're in a pool banging. You're like, wait,
Yeah. And
where did this come from?
they're like
But
soulmates that would die for each other and you're like, "Wait,
yeah,
what? Hold on. Where did
yeah.
this?"
So you see Don and Azura, and it makes sense because you see them build the trust, build the
Hmm.
bonds of a relationship. So that was really like how you said, it is a very well done relationship. You get to see the
Hmm.
start, the middle, like the whole thing blossom. So I really did enjoy the relationship. Um, one of the notes I had, which is kind of funny, is when him and her start like hooking up,
Hmm.
they make it a point to show that he has no belly button, like a test tube baby. So I
Hmm.
really enjoyed that they did that. That the attention to detail, that he grew up in a
Yeah.
lab and he's not going to have a belly button because there's no umbilical cord. So I
Hmm.
really love the fact that they made sure to include that. And I kind of wish they didn't like focus heavily on that. They just didn't they just kind of did like oh, wow, he's in shape. Oh, wow, he does have a belly button. Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. They connected, not like, yeah, I'm a clone, so I have no belly button. And let me
Right,
just,
right. They
but
didn't
that
make a
was,
big deal out of it. It was very like subtle.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that they did very subtly, which I thought was hilarious, was Azura wears a regular common bra in the future. Because you always seen like Gale has like the like almost like a sports bra type thing. Sarah Harding has like a sports bra. She has a regular normal 20th
Right.
century, 21st century bra with the claps in the back.
Yeah, she's the vintage girl.
Yeah,
You
so you
know.
kind of think like, oh,
Yeah,
whoa,
she's
wait,
the
wait.
hipster. She's the hipster
Yeah.
of Foundation, you know.
So I,
She likes the old stuff, yeah.
so I thought that was kind of unique that they gave her a lacy, unique old bra. I was like, okay, that I guess they'll still have them in the future.
Yeah, so let's see. Yeah, so he goes into all the stuff that he does wrong. He kind of
Yeah.
explains to her that all the things that he does that are incorrect, right? And I think that he's a really interesting character because I really
He is.
empathize with him actually because uh, the idea of like you're and obviously this relates to a lot of modern day people that go through a lot of identity issues growing up. I think it's a really like an empathetic parallel to that.
Yeah.
But he talks about how like ever since he was born, he's literally been playing a role since
Yep.
he's been a child, like a little kid. Like he's never been able to be himself. He's constantly impersonating two people that are
Yeah.
watching him like a hawk throughout his life. And like I really felt that through Cassian Bilton's performance too, because I really like I thought he did
Yeah.
a really good job of like conveying that, but he seemed very traumatized and very like damaged from it. And I was like, yeah, that makes
Yeah.
100% sense. Like if you were a kid and ever since you were a kid, once you started realizing you were a little different, you had to just like you had to like
Yeah.
impersonate two people that like they know you inside and out, so like they'd be able to pick up any kind of difference, so you're
Yeah.
constantly just being like guarded by them the whole time.
And
Like that's pretty traumatizing.
one of my favorite things, like he had a lot of throwaway lines. Like the one thing was like the hand stuff, and
Hmm.
that goes to what we talked about. We think that he is left-handed. He's not right-handed because he says these cleons do right over left. I do left over right, and it's like okay, that means his dominant hand is his left hand.
Right.
Just because it needs to be on top. He how he eats food, how he starts with they start with like starch and proteins. He goes protein starch. So he says all these things that he has to think about every single time
Hmm.
he's with them, and it helps the viewers know and let us know that when he's with Azora, he's able to be himself. He's not trying to
Right.
be someone different. He is who he truly is, and that was a really great thing that they did there, where
Yeah.
I can't be someone different. And then that's where they go. He shows Azura like why he can't be different. And I think having that scene is very helps set how it's it shows how little they're thought of as a person and more of
Hmm.
as a symbol. And you get to see that where I don't know if you want to take this part and explain it. And then we could stop it. We could continue right after like what he shows her and stuff like that.
What he shows, or what do you mean?
The tanks
Oh
of
yeah, 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 he
yeah.
he shows her the tanks. Is that a later scene as well?
Yeah, it's after they
But yeah.
after they kind of
Yeah,
like
so
do it.
we can jump to that when it gets to that part too, because I had some stuff to say about that section as well.
Oh,
But
no, yeah, it is because it's like right after they
it's
they
right
make
after
love,
this scene essentially.
and he
Yeah,
admits to her that he can't wear the color correcting contacts because they'll notice right away.
true. Yeah, it was like in the same scene. I
Yeah.
thought you brought up a really good point, which is yeah, it's I think the reason why this relationship works where the other ones didn't in Foundation, the other relationships didn't feel right, is because like you said, I completely understand why he would fall for her because
Yeah.
it's the only person like you said that he's able to be himself around. Literally been like he's been impersonating someone for his
Yep.
entire life, like under threat of death. You know what I mean? Like you've had to impersonate somebody, and like you said too, the it really ties you to his character when you think about all the little minutia that he's had to constantly think of day in
Yeah.
and day out, where he's like, oh god, I got to put my left hand over my right hand. Oh no, I got to like make sure I eat my starches first. Like this little tiny minutia stuff that you have to
Yeah.
constantly be aware of because a future version of yourself is monitoring you at all times. It's a really like kind of scary like when you think about it,
Yeah.
it's a really kind of terrifying like
It
ordeal. So I
is.
really I really empathize with the character, and I thought he really portrayed it well in the performance and stuff as well. So it goes
Yeah.
to the tanks where he goes in and he shows them, hey, at pretty much at any point, and this is also feeding off of the Dorwin tech earlier, where he said he
Yep.
has a constant recording of his memories and things he sees and hears going on in his head that he can send as a beacon. This is kind of an extension of that, where it shows that at least what we see Brother Dusk. Is
We
Brother Dusk one of them as well, or is it just Dawn and Day that are kind of the contingency ones in case something
uh
happens?
Dawn and Day are the contingency ones because I think at
Yeah,
that point Brother Dusk is already he's already out the door.
right. So it shows Dusk and or I'm sorry, so it's Dawn and Day, and they have essentially like surrogate versions of themselves constantly at the ready in case something happened. And these surrogates are being uploaded like from essentially from like the cloud of
Yep.
their thoughts and their
Yeah.
feelings and their things they see and hear, so that if they were to die, the other one could step out and pick up right at where the other one left off.
Yeah.
So there's this what's that? I forget what the narrative term for it is. It's like a uh,
It's
Damocles above his head at all times, where it's like at any
yeah,
moment if he dies, like it's like not a big deal. I think it's called the Sword of Damocles, but
yeah. I'm unfamiliar with the term, so I'm like,
yeah, yeah.
but
No,
I
it's
know
all
what you
right.
mean.
I think that's
Yeah.
what it's called. But he's constantly has that over his head where he's like, if I make a mistake, they'll easily just kill me, and then
Yeah.
this surrogate will take over. It also shows Brother Day. This is a Chekhov's gun in narrative where
Yeah.
they're showing that there's these surrogates there in case one of the two dies. And in my head, I go, well, that has to happen now, right? So like, and I'll get to that in my predictions phase as well because it can go one of two ways. But this reminded me of a scene where the test tube emperors is a Chekhov's gun, where it's like if you show the gun, it's gonna get used. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's like a writing trick. So I immediately kind of perked up and said, "Uh oh." It
Yeah.
kind of put alarms off in my head.
And one thing with the show that we've noticed is they show things for a reason. They don't show things just to show things. Like
Hmm.
everything that we see and they talk about the MacGuffins have a purpose. They're not just there just to move the plot. They're there because they are part of the plot.
Right.
So,
So yes, so we go that scene, and then we get to Gale, right? So we get to
finally,
Gale on the Raven, I think is the name of the ship, and she's tending to
oh,
Harry
before
Seldon. How he? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
before we forget, there's a scene where Azora tells Brother Don like, "Hey, why don't you just leave with me?
Oh,
Just
right, right.
escape. Just leave."
Hmm.
And he goes, "I can't." One, they'll know exactly where I am.
Yeah,
Two, they have a replacement for me. So even if I were to leave, they'll just kill me off and activate the replacement. And he shows the nanotech and she goes, well, is there any way that you could come with me to experience something other than these stuff? And we get to see the firefly, the little dragonfly again, and you see him fly it with her and like explore the worlds because she goes, there's a place where it's real, where there's real sunlight, real flowers, real
right.
life. And that was a really unique thing because this is the first time we see him kind of like, well, let's explore the outside world. Let me go with you. Let me go. I can't go with you, but there's ways where I could still see it. So show me what you
Yeah.
want to show me and we can experience it together.
She's providing him hope.
Yeah.
So she's providing the character hope. He's been in this really dark place where he's constantly thinking about either killing himself or the fact that he's going to die because he's different. And
Yeah.
she's providing him, even if it's unrealistic hope, where she's saying like, "Oh, you can get rid of the nanobots, and oh, they won't come find you, and you can make sure to change your appearance and all this kind of stuff." And she's saying kind of these things, hoping that hoping that he kind of takes heed and does it and tries it
Yeah.
essentially, because she's saying you can't live how you're living. The other
Yeah.
interesting thing too, and we'll get into more of that in the predictions phase for me as well. But the other interesting thing is, like you said, when she goes on that train, she says that a lot of people really loved that the Star Bridge got destroyed
Yeah.
because it opened a scar up in the world and that they can actually see real clouds for the first time. So I thought that was a cool perspective because you were thinking about the Star Bridge as this like terrible tragedy, which it was because all those people died. But there's this
Yeah.
silver lining of like the dome of artificiality was broken momentarily, so they actually saw like real light and real
Yeah.
clouds coming through,
Yeah.
and they apparently it resonated with a lot of the people on Trantor as well. So I thought that was a cool little wrinkle.
Yeah, and then before we move on to
Hmm.
the two main things that happen in the episode, there is a thing with Brother Dusk where he comes in and talks to Brother Day and says, or Brother Dawn and goes like, "Hey, you missed a dinner bell. Why'd you miss a dinner bell? You know, punctuality. We're never late. We're always on time." And that's the first time you start seeing that like they're starting to notice that like something's not right. Like they never missed a dinner bell. They
Yeah.
they're they're exact. They're always on time. They're never distracted.
Hmm.
So it's unique perspective and unique talk that they have because they also go into like Trantor, what is Trantor, what makes Trantor Trantor, and Brother Don pretty much tells him like you are Trantor, like these walls are Trantor, like you don't need to worry about the outside world, like
Exactly.
focus on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Focus on being a symbol. That's all you are. You
Yep.
know. That's all
Eh,
you're good for.
yep, pretty much. And then we finally get to Gale,
Yep. So
and
we're on the Raven. We get to Gale, and she's trying to nurse Harry back to life. I guess as a he's like a hologram, but she's trying to force him back to life. One of my issues was this scene. as well. I thought the whole like he's like a computer program on a ship, and she's like, "Follow my boys, try really
Oh,
hard," and he's and
no,
then, go ahead.
before I forget,
Yeah.
I want to give you 110, 150% props. You
Uh,
called the importance of the knife. You said that the
yeah.
knife was important, the knife
Mhm.
was needed, and I just kind of like, I just
Yeah.
it's I think it was a throwaway. I think it just needed something metal. But when Harry comes into fruition, like all that stuff, the knife that you predicted was important is 100% important.
Yeah,
I
no,
wanted
it's
to,
definitely true. And but
yeah,
I'll push back against myself a little bit because was it really that important in this episode? Because I remember when he was glitching and she's going, "Why is he glitching?" I'm like, they showed when she initially got to the Raven that the knife went into the thing, and they kept showing a close up of the knife, and it's like glitching with its little like lights. And I remember
yeah,
thinking, "Oh, the knife isn't in there all the way. Something's like the connection with the knife is off." So I remember thinking that when we first saw that episode, and I was like, something's not interfacing with the ship correctly because they showed it like two or three times, the knife
yeah,
kind of shaking around. So in reality, it wasn't really that important. I thought it should have been, but when he was glitching out, and she says, "Why are you glitching?" and she immediately, I was like, "Oh, go." Gail, I thought Gail was going to figure out, oh, it's the knife. I need to go
yeah,
figure out how, the knife is not fitting in correctly. That's why he's glitching. And that connection is never made by Gail at all. And she just goes, and she just starts going like, "Follow my voice. Come on, try really hard, computer program." And then he's
yeah.
like, "Oh, I'm okay." I remember thinking like that was really cringy.
It
And I was like,
was,
"Ah, really?" I was like,
and
I
he's like
thought
in
it
the
would have,
suit, and
yeah, I thought it would have made so much more sense if she thought back and went, "Wait, how is he here? Oh, it must have been like in the knife that he gave that Raish gave me." And then she goes and
yeah,
figures it out. That's what I thought was going to happen. And then it just maybe I don't know if they cut that scene or something, but they definitely showed the knife like it was not interfacing
yeah,
correctly. So it seems weird that they would just kind of abandon that for the episode, but that it's neither here nor there. I just wanted to push back that
yeah.
yeah, I was right about the knife being important, but it wasn't right enough for the episode to actually pay it off in this one,
Oh yeah,
which felt kind of weird.
Pendejo, take credit, okay? Take
Yeah, yeah,
credit.
no,
You were
I'll take
right,
credit.
okay? You're like, no, I wasn't right. I was right. I'm like,
Yeah,
stop with the humble bullshit, dude. Take
yeah,
credit. You're 100% right. The knife was important because it was
yeah.
what activated the ship.
No, yeah, 100%. It has this data unit on it and everything.
Yeah. So anyway,
I yeah, I was just mad that she didn't know that it was causing the glitching because that's what
yeah,
100% what was causing it.
yeah.
Um,
So Harry had like the smuggest son of a bitch look. Like he's like when he was like decked out in the suit, and that's just Jared Harris. That's the reason why I love the series so much is
mhm.
because of his acting, and those scenes like that where he's by himself in a black suit. He stole that scene
Yeah,
from Lou. I think it's like Lou
Lula Bell,
LaBuddy. Yeah, Lou
Lula
LaBelle.
Bell. Yeah,
Like just stole that scene from her. And anyway, yeah.
yeah,
I just want to say you're 100% right.
to her point, it is Jared Harris. So I
Yeah.
mean, you know, it's not. I don't know. There's not a lot of people that could steal scenes from him anyway. But um, it's yeah. So he just kind of like wills himself out of glitching, and
Yeah.
then uh, and then I think we change scenes before we get back to him
Yes.
in the suit and stuff, right? So
Yes. We
then we
changed
change
scenes.
scenes to back on Invictus, right?
Yep.
So yeah, we're back on Invictus, and Salvor is trying to talk. I think Akiva, I think is his name. I looked up some of the names after,
Yeah.
and she's telling him he needs to fight. She finds one of those little like um, force field fences that she had on Terminus that she has to disable,
Yep.
and then we get the second fight scene. The first one was the turret scene. We get the second kind of action fight scene, which takes place, and again, I thought back to episode 5, the one that we hated,
Yeah.
where Farah was fighting Salvor in this dark, crappy hallway, and it was over edited, and it was just
Yeah.
like this really, really boring kind of visually like flat scene.
Yeah.
And then in this one, I go in and there's these orange flares and these crosses on the wall that are coming on the background, and there's this like coolant that's raining down from all this broken
Yeah.
stuff. And I remember thinking like, this is so much more visually interesting for a fight
Yes.
scene than that one in episode 5. And I was so glad that Jennifer Fong, is it Fong?
Yeah.
Uh,
Funk.
I was so glad that
PHANG.
Jennifer Fong, and she did that throughout this entire episode. I thought she did a wonderful job, but she made all of these little moments like visually consequential, where she's like, "Oh no, if we're gonna have a fight, let's have it in a really
Yeah.
cool location where there's acid water and like these little moats and like all this rain coming down and all this like orange light coming through the
Yes.
walls. I just thought it was really visually interesting, and the editing was a lot better as well.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. Like this was hands down such a better constructed fight scene, better visual, better lighting, better everything.
Hmm.
Because we got to see more of the action. It didn't feel like it was cut. It didn't feel like it was hidden. It was clear. It was concise. It was just very well done. The orange lights highlight certain
Hmm.
scenes. They didn't use it. I was like, oh yeah, this would be the background. Random lightning. Why is there lightning in a room? But then they explained it earlier that when they turn on the environment, there is going to be storms. There are going to be
Right.
random flux. And they explain like, yeah, this is a room where they use to cool the engines. This is where the engines go to get cooled.
Yeah.
So they explain everything perfectly leading up to this fight scene because it explains the rain, explains the random lightning, and it was just a very well constructed beginning, middle, and sequence where you see Salver going like, "Hey, we need to fight back. We can't let this
Hmm.
happen." The guy was like, "I'm not a warrior," but then you start to see him think like, "We can't let this happen. I need to
Yeah.
fight." And he ends up being one of the best fighters. It's like, Jesus Christ, old
Dude, he
man, you're
was
like one of
actually
the best fighters.
he actually held his own pretty well.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's like I'm so glad that they did that. I'm so glad that she did. She, people could have eye rolled when they said like, "Oh, we're gonna have weather patterns inside" or something like that. But
yeah,
dude, that made that scene so much more dynamic and so much more visually interesting. And I really wish they would have done something like that in that episode 5 scene
yeah,
where it was just really flat. They just come up with something like even that was just kind of throwaway line of like, "Hey, we've activated the atmospheric systems. It's
yeah.
going to cause some weather stuff," and it's like, cool. We get to see weather stuff in the backdrop of this stuff. That's awesome.
And
Anytime
yeah,
you can visually make it. The other thing, real quick too, that Jennifer Fong did that I talked about earlier vaguely was the flashing lights
yeah,
that are counting down. I love that's what that is because they could have easily made it like a dial or something really boring that just kind of is a
yeah.
countdown to this thing, and it could have just been like 4 hours. And I love that she was like, no, let's make like the whole ship pulsate light, and it's making it visually like dynamic
Yeah,
instead of just making it like a stupid throwaway thing, you know?
one of the best things, like I'm gonna copy Ridley Scott, take it from Ridley Scott, Aliens, the second movie of
Hmm.
the Alien franchise. He set a timer of 15 minutes. That timer in Aliens is 15 minutes.
Hmm.
And they tell you it is 15 minutes and they show you it's 15 minutes. This is it's not like that, but it's very similar where they say we have 4 hours, but they're giving you that timer of like, here is a sequence of time. We're gonna tell you how many flashes they are, and that tells you the countdown. And I love
Yeah,
the fact that they're telling you we have a set limit of time. We can't go beyond four
right.
hours, even
But they're
though
not telling they're not telling you, they're showing you, and I think that's
yeah.
what's really important. It's showing
And
you with the flashing pulsing lights, and it's not somebody saying like, "Hey guys, we only have 2 hours." You know what I mean? It's like it's showing it
yeah,
visually, you know?
and some people are able to figure out the timing and structures and stuff like that, but it's the first time we've actually seen a sense of time being added to a scene. It's the first time where like, okay, we know that they have 4 hours.
Right.
So what can they do in 4 hours? And you can think about it just logically. And so giving the timing, and it was really good. And I love that they finally did that in a sequence of this stuff. So now we have a sense of
Yeah.
time.
And we get the last thing I wanted to say about that scene. There's two quick things. One, we talked a little bit about the ghost ship concept. About there's this ship that's going to keep jumping to random
Yeah.
places, and it'll jump to a place that's outside of comms, and then people will just kind of die in cold space. It's this really kind of horrifying thing. I thought that was a
Yeah.
really cool. I thought that was a really cool play on like those ghost pirate ships where they say like, oh,
Yeah.
there's like a pirate ship with a bunch of dead pirates on it. And I remember thinking, oh, that's a really cool way to kind of tie that into space. And it's kind of horrifying. And I think Forrest sits down with her and says, "Now you know the stakes. Like we could warp into like literally a sun or a black hole, and it's
Yeah.
like this really
And
scary thing, you know?"
honestly, like after 500 or 700 years that it's been like floating around like that in space, I'm like, if it hasn't hit a black hole or like a
Dude,
sun, what makes you
they're
think the next jump is going to be the one that takes you into the?
true.
It's like the chances of that happening are like slim to none.
Right. But the chances of it going to empty space where you can't get anything was really high. You know,
Yeah,
that's a really high probability. So your odds of dying are super high if they don't figure this out, and I think that's what's kind of scary about it, about the whole thing. But
yeah.
um,
The
the
final.
other thing.
Oh, go
Oh, go
for it.
ahead.
Sorry.
I was going to
Oh,
say the last thing about that scene was what kind of annoyed me. This was another criticism that I had of the show
for your
is
favorite episode, this is like a lot of
yeah.
annoyances.
No, there's like little nitpicks, but I think for the most part it was really well done. But They after the fight scene, she appeals to Farah's second in command. I forget his name, but uh,
Rowan.
Rowan. Yeah, she says, Rowan, you know, you can't do this or whatever. And then they proceed to go all Doctor Evil and tell her their entire plan. And they
Yeah.
say, "Oh, well, we don't plan to go anywhere. We're gonna jump this ship right into the middle of Trantor, and you're gonna be on it too." And then Farah says that to them, and I remember just kind of going like, "What?" I was just like, they right. I feel like at that point they lost any leverage that they had over them,
Yeah.
right? Like, why would you do anything that they say when you know that the end result is they're going to try to warp a ship into the middle of Trantor, kill all of you on it, and
Yeah.
then destroy the planet? Like, at that point, it's like, okay, well, just shoot me. Like, I'm not doing. I'll
Yeah.
shoot myself. You know what I mean? Like, I remember thinking, like, that's so weird that they just kind of like gave away all of their leverage in that situation just to tell them that their plan. I was just like, I
Yeah.
don't know why they would do anything with them now.
Yeah. No, there's that, and one of the things that they also did, like as a throwaway line has that harkens back to this, is they said that the Empire has always made sure to hide jump technology. Like they've always made sure to keep that a secret. Like that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
reasons why they've been able to conquer the universe, was because they have that technology and nobody else has it. So it's kind of like, well, if this ship is jumping randomly and it's like people have known about it, wouldn't you want to try to like track it down, blow it up, or like destroy it, outside of
Yeah.
just like it could randomly jump? Like how many times in 700 years, like hasn't it ever jumped inside the middle of a planet and blown it up? So it's there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense, and it's kind of like, oh, for plot stuff. So like getting that to jump into the middle of Trantor's, like, couldn't it have already happened like already, where it jumps into the middle of a ship? And
Yeah.
then they're guarding this jump technology because so there's a lot of stuff that was like, okay. Anyway,
Yeah. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I was like, yeah, because we could go on and on about like all these like
Mm-hmm.
little nuances, and it's just
Right.
it we've yeah, it's beating a dead horse.
Yeah. So it goes back to the Raven,
Yep.
I think is the next scene. Yeah, so the Raven. Apparently because Harry was did not sync because of the knife, I'm telling you. Because Harry did not sync with the ship correctly, the life support systems faded, and now Gale is like gasping for air, asking Harry to
Yeah.
help her. And he does. Nothing happens different, but apparently, right at the last minute, Harry just goes, you know what? I'm going to interface correctly. And he
Yeah.
interfaces with the ship and then saves the life support systems. I remember thinking, because it just goes authorization complete. And I remember thinking, like, wait, what happened? Like,
Yeah.
why is it complete? What did they do? I thought that was a little weird. I just remember thinking, like, I don't know if they're going to explain that in a later episode or something, but right at the last minute, it just starts working. Nothing really changed.
Yeah.
But did you pick up anything as to what might have caused him to just all of a sudden start working correctly?
I Who knows? Like certain
Yeah.
things about this certain like this is one of the things about the show. Like there's way too convenient conclusions or convenient actions or convenient things to happen to save the person's life. So I just chalk it up to it was gonna happen regardless. Like plot
Right.
armor.
Yeah. He reveals to her, so he starts working and he reveals to her that he, in fact, had an illness,
Yes.
Leth syndrome, I think is what it was called.
Yeah.
Lethe, I think. And they didn't specify what the illness is specifically, but it does come with a bout of cognitive decline. So it seems kind of like a dementia type illness that will decline over time. So I did kind of like that wrinkle in there because I thought, oh, well, that kind of makes sense that he would want to kill himself while he has all his faculties and record it if he's going to be suffering an illness. With if you have a brain like Harry Seldon's, you can't afford to. Cognitive decline is like worse than death. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it made sense that he kind of did the plan how he did that, and I didn't pick up that he might have been dealing with some kind of terminal or serious illness throughout there. But that was a cool kind of reveal, and I remember
Yeah.
thinking like, oh, that kind of makes things make a lot of sense as well.
No, it
Um,
does.
mhm.
I like that scene just because Harry admitted that his greatest flaw and things like that. Like that scene was just beautifully done, and there was a lot of back and forth between Gale and Harry of like
Mhm.
who is right and who is wrong. And what I loved about that scene particularly is when both of them say, like when Harry's like, I have this terminal disease, I want to live, I did not want to die. That's why I did what I did. And then Harry calls out Gale for almost the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And it was very, very unique perspective of like he says, "You're exactly like me. Just
Hmm.
admit it." And Gail's like, "No, I'm nothing like you." And it's a really, really cool like argument that they have, and I love that they included that type of argument.
Yeah, they're like two sides of the same coin, you know.
Yeah,
Um, he calls her out. He says essentially like, you know, this is all your, this is our fault. This, you
yeah,
chose this too. You left Synax. You did the Abraxas equation. You came to Trantor and all this stuff. You
yeah,
lied to the Empire when you know, you had the opportunity not to, and all
yeah,
this stuff. So he pretty much calls her out for her part in it, that she's been knocking over dominoes too. That's led to
yeah,
this result.
yeah,
So yeah, he I thought the sets are obviously like the Raven set I think is really cool. A lot of the shots here were really good.
yes,
She starts he starts asking her how she was able to essentially come to his room while that was occurring. And she
yep,
says something along the lines of, I could feel it in the air. Bear McCreary's score starts swelling here, which I thought was really
yes,
effective. I thought his score was really good in the scene. And she starts kind of talking about her intuition. The only tiny issue that I had with this scene was that they were presenting it like this was a huge reveal to us. And I remember thinking like I think any casual fan of Foundation knew that Gail had superhuman intuition like
yeah,
after episode 1. You know what I mean? Like this was something we
yeah,
always knew that she had this ability. We just never knew how she had it. And we still
yeah.
don't know how she has it, but um they were presenting it like, "Oh my god, this is going to blow your guys' minds," you know?
I
And I
know,
remember
but
thinking
like,
like we kind of know this already like for
yeah,
the most
like
part.
the one thing I didn't like about this scene, and like I said, I love the scene, but there's a few things I didn't like about it. One of
Mhm.
the ones was they're about her precognition, about being able to see the future. They're like they flash back to all the foreshadowing that they gave, and it's like, oh,
Mhm.
remember when this and here and here, and you're like, I get it, I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, yeah.
She knew that the sky bridge was exploding before anybody else did. She knew that this was happening. She knew that this was
Right.
happening. She knew that she could wake up in the middle of the jump. So I was like, we didn't need to see that because we already
Yeah.
know it.
Yeah, it was a little on the nose, and it seemed like
Yeah.
they were trying. And like that's what I'm saying is like the way they presented it with showing all the flashbacks made it seem like we weren't already aware of that as a casual audience watching the show. I think anybody. I don't know if they just anticipated that people wouldn't pick up on this, and they thought, oh, this would be a really cool reveal. But I think after I don't think you. I think like any casual fan after episode 1 was like, oh wow, there's something different with her. She has a superhuman intuition where she knows
Yeah.
things are going to happen before they happen. That was something we knew way early on, and in the way they did that scene. While I don't want to hit on it too hard because I thought the scene was gorgeous. I loved how they opened. I love how right before they had their argument, Jennifer Fong said, "We're going to have this intense scene with them. It needs to visually portray that as well." So they open the star like window or whatever, and you see Helicon, this red dwarf star, and they go into this debris field where there's like this lightning going on and these lightning flashes. And I just remember going like, "Oh, Jennifer Fong is killing this right now." It's elevating the scene so much, and like I love directors that if the characters are having a really emotional moment, they portray it visually by showing like crashing lights and like, you know, crazy stuff going outside in the debris field and everything. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah. I What I love about the scene, and I was gonna bring it up, was she says, why are we going through this debris field? We could die. And Harry's like, ship's fine. But
Hmm.
what the thing I love most about that scene is like when they start their argument, both of them are in red.
Hmm.
And they're both trying to say who is the better person. And then when they both realize that they're exactly the same, they lose their red tint because they then move and they start becoming blue, clear, more open, more like honest with
Hmm.
themselves of who they really are. And then
Exactly.
when they start fighting again, they move back into the red room. But you see the subtle changes of Gale where she's being like red, but clear, red, clear, red, clear. And Harry, throughout this entire scene, he's just in one solid color because he already comes to terms with who he is at this point in time.
Yeah.
But Gale is still fighting about who and what she is, because like you see the red, the clear, the red, the clear, until finally when it hits the crescendo and she blocks that debris, she's fully clear, and it shows that she finally comes to terms with who she is. And that was a beautiful transition that they did, where like it was beautifully
Yeah.
stunning that they fought, but the visuals help incorporate like the anger, the rage, the
Yeah.
blame, with each character.
Yeah, again, I think this is the best episode that I've seen of the season, and I think it's mostly in part due to the direction. I thought the direction was so good in this. I thought Jennifer Fine did such an amazing job of visualizing these really emotional scenes.
Yep.
And the pacing I thought was the best one that I'd seen. There was a lot of cool action set pieces and a lot of stuff going on. It really felt like a quick watch. It didn't feel long at all to
Yeah.
me as well.
No, it was good.
So the last thing I want to say about that last scene with where we should specify too. She gets like a shield or something, and
Yeah.
as they're going through the debris field, right before a piece of debris cuts through the shield and it's about to hit her in the head, she turns and blocks it, which is like no human would be able to do under normal circumstances. And then she says, and this I think is probably the most important quote of the episode. She says, she's essentially like, I went to your room not through math and not through calculations. I think I can feel the future.
Yeah.
And I remember that raised kind of a red flag in my head, and I got a little. It kind of annoyed me at first, but since I've thought about it, it makes a lot more sense to me. But I don't know why she would assume that it's not through math and not through calculations. I remember thinking like, why she's like one of these. So just to back up about that, because I think this is going to be a huge theme for season 2. There's theoretically a math equation that is out there that if no one's going to figure this out forever, but there's theoretically a math equation out there that kind of explains the world. And if someone were to figure out this math equation, they would kind of know things are going to happen before they happen. It's kind of the basis of psychohistory essentially. But I always understood Gail as a character that she's like this far future character that is so prodigious, or she's such a big prodigy and such a mathematical genius that she's able to intuit that equation to kind of figure out more specific things that are going to occur. She's able to kind of expand on psychohistory in a way that Harry couldn't, because she's such a genius mathematical mind that she's able to kind of intuit these things subconsciously. Yeah. That's how I always assumed that was her character. So it kind of not frustrated me, but it kind of raised a red flag for me when she says it's not through math and not through calculations. I think I can feel the future. And after I watched the episode, I thought on that, and I thought, oh well, this is a really interesting dynamic, because I think this is going to be the main arc for her character in season 2, because there's only 2 explanations for how she can feel the future. It's either math and calculations, which she says it's not, which means that Gail thinks that this is something from the sleeper. That's the only other explanation as to why she thinks that she has this ability, if it's not her math and calculations.
No,
so
exactly.
It's really setting up her crisis of faith, where she's torn between science and math, and then her religion as a seer. But I think this was a really important scene and a really important quote, because it shows that she thinks that this is like a miracle that's been bestowed upon her from the seer. Because you think about the religion is called seers, and she can see into the future, and the sleeper must have bestowed this to her. So I think it sets up a super interesting arc for her for the rest of the season, and probably into season 2, where she's trying to grapple with, or is this ability I have something that is coming from my brain and coming from science and mathematics, or is this something that is like a religious gift from somebody? I thought that was a really cool way to end the episode.
Yeah. So I think at this point, because we do have a rehearsal that we have to get to, and I got to travel a little bit. So what are predictions, theories, and ideas that you have?
Yeah, so next episode, we're probably going to get to Helicon. We're going to see Helicon for the first time, which would be really cool, because that's like a red dwarf or whatever. The missing piece is going to be it's 8, right? This is 7.
Yep, episode 8.
My prediction, and I think both of our predictions, I don't want to be too bold, but I don't think Hugo's dead at all.
No, God, no. He's not dead.
I think Hugo's floating, and he's either going for the mining base, or he's going for an alternate entry on Invictus, so that he can upload that guy's thing to he's going to essentially do that. I think that's 100% going to happen in the next episode, or the next 2 episodes. I think most likely he's going to another section on the Invictus. He lied that his little like booster things weren't working, and he just kind of didn't use them, and then he's going to use them once they left, and to get on the Invictus, he's going to upload that thing, and that's what's going to alert the Cleon, since that's coming. I think that's 100% going to happen.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's going to happen. One thing we didn't talk about is Harry's thing was to have Gale on Terminus. Raish was going to be with him on the ship in Halcyon, and he was going to be dead regardless.
Yeah.
So we got to see more of like what Raish's role is, and it leads us to that. One of the things that Salvador said was that Harry never predicted her. And I think
Right.
what she is what Gail was supposed to be, where she could kind of see the future. She could kind of lead the Terminus team. And I love the fact that even though he wasn't predicted, but it still happened. So that was really cool.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
So I really do enjoy that. I think we're gonna get more into like Gale's power and the Invictus, like where that's going. Like the missing piece is going to be something that is important to connect everything together for the next episode. Because I noticed that each episode has a certain thing, like Death and the Maiden, that dealt a lot upon Luminous and how the Maiden's viewed in society and how death kind of ties into religion. Upon Awakening is when we got to see more of Brother Don being more of himself, being more open to who he truly is. So it's a unique thing that they've done. And in the future, I know that Invictus, Hugo's probably gonna do something to save the day.
Yeah.
Salvador is gonna learn more about Farah. And honestly, I think that Invictus is still gonna blow up not Terminus. It's gonna blow up Trantor, but I don't think it's gonna be as severe as they hope it is. I think they're gonna just miss it and just kind of like crash into the planet.
Possibly, yeah. The other big prediction that I have that I'm going to be bold and make here is, again, I talked about Chekhov's gun with the tanks.
Yeah.
They're getting used. They show them they're obviously getting used, which means one of two things is going to happen. Brother Day is going to die, or Brother Dawn's going to die. And I think it's going to happen before the end of the season. My money is on Brother Dawn. I think what's going to happen is that they are going to plan his escape, and we're going to find out that Azura has been working with Dusk because Dusk has something on her family or something along those lines. We've already seen that Dusk has deployed spies on Dawn, and that he's already tried to pay off one concubine with Dawn to get information. There's no reason why Dusk would not be using any kind of nefarious tools at his disposal to try to get Azura to flip on Brother Dawn in this instance and give him the information he wants and kill him afterward. I think that's most likely what's going to happen. We're going to think they're making an escape. Brother Dusk is going to find him or something and is going to kill him, and it's going to be this very tragic end for Brother Dawn. The other option, though, if that doesn't happen, is it's very possible that Brother Day does not survive this spirit walk that he's going to go on. And that would be a really interesting thing to do too. So I kind of want that one to happen, because that would be the more unexpected turn, because he would die trying to do this spirit walk that he hubristically like said, oh yeah, I can do this. It's not a big deal. And he goes and he dies doing it. It cements in all of the followers' mind that he doesn't have a soul and that he's not one with the Maiden.
Yep.
And then the New Day has to come out of that tank and take over that mess. Of like the entire galaxy thinking that he doesn't have a soul because he didn't survive this spirit walk. I think that would be really interesting as well. But those are my two big predictions for next episode.
I feel it.
I think that pretty much wraps up this one. I had a really great time with this episode, guys. I hope you had a good time with the discussion here. We are going to be back next Friday. We're going to go back to our normally scheduled time around 6:30 p.m. and we're going to do this live again. So I appreciate you guys watching with us here. Do you have anything that you're working on? Any kind of any articles or anything you want to promo?
Not right now, just because of the wedding. I just took a hiatus for this week for any articles and reviews, so that way I could just do that.
Cool. Yeah. We've got a wedding to go to this weekend. I've got a watch party real quick right now. It's a tie between Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and Enter the Dragon. We're going to be watching that Monday, guys. So this should be out before then. If you guys want to hang out and watch one of those movies, make sure to check the link in the description below if you're watching on YouTube, or you can always go to youtube.com/thedistracts. We're going to be watching that. But that's going to do it for us here, guys. Triple blessings to you all. What is it? Triple blessings to you all.
Triple blessings.
Respect and enjoy the peace. Yeah, respect and enjoy the peace, and may the light never dim, guys. We will see you next week.
See you next week, guys.